So we're experimenting with text analytics in the member experience for the association. I think I'm learning a lot, having a lot of fun with it.
Mad Men could see us now. So cool.
Yeah, and Addie doesn't drink any martinis at lunch. Hi, I'm Matt Eagle, host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive impact by focusing on their customer experience and culture together. I'm really excited to be here today with Colleen Fazio. Welcome, Colleen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Colleen is the senior analyst at Forrester, I should say a senior analyst at Forrester, and she advises clients on how to buy and use CX tech, including AI, and how to build and optimize voice of the customer programs. Thanks for joining today, Colleen.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So just to get the ball rolling, Colleen, what do you see as some of the most exciting opportunities for experienced management professionals today, and what are some of the key challenges?
Yeah, sort of the two sides of the same coin, I think, right? um, I think what's exciting is, um, you know, for organizations that are ready to sort of embrace AI and think about a future that looks different than today, it's an opportunity to build better. CX sort of came around after marketing and after sales. Like we're the new kids on the block a little bit. And I think in many organizations, it's kind of an add-on still or a little bit of a silo. Then we start thinking about all of our customer experiences and how we're going to enable them with AI or how our customers are going to be using AI to interact with us. And thinking about the customer experience of those new experiences, it brings CX closer to the center, maybe closer to the world where decisions are being made and helping design better. So there's a lot of opportunity for CX leaders that are ready and willing to step into that organizational sort of void that's emerging around like what does good look like in the future. Things that have been around, since like the founding fathers of CX, like heuristics from things like color contrast on websites and hierarchy, like all of that is getting shaken up with potentially agents doing the shopping and agents visiting your website. We always talk about the 3 E's: emotion, efficiency, and effectiveness. Like, does your agent care about emotion? So all of these things that we've sort of built CX on are shaking a little bit, which is an opportunity and a challenge, but I think it's really exciting. It's an exciting time to be in CX to think about how we build better and redefine what good looks like.
I think you're raising a really good point here, and just to kind of put a line under it, um, like CX is shifting from, but it's even more important because what we're seeing with, you mentioned agentic and AI, but just essentially with more real time, more analytics, more personalization, more agentic bots, it's really important to design excellence into the experience versus be reactive after the fact. So CX is a partner with marketing and sales and service to essentially design quality into the experience and help be a partner for insights and ongoing new approaches that are more agile and are more data driven and aren't about gathering feedback later and sharing the feedback, but being a partner in the design and the agile delivery of the experience.
Yeah, completely agree. Sort of that CX is hopefully going to be shifting left or whatever direction that is, to be more in the proactive design phase and feeding into that experience design. Wouldn't that be just a great future to have?
Yeah, years ago, to make this personal for me for a second, loved your take on this, is like I used to focus on digital. And then I later realized that I was a customer experience guy because so many of the digital experiences were just that: experiences like e-commerce, loyalty, digital shopper marketing, personalization. And a lot of them are phygital, digital together with, whether it's a digital trade, the trade show that you're digitizing, or a design studio, or a sales visit. A store visit actually has people are using their phone while they're there. So there's these phygital experiences. And I actually started thinking of myself as a CX guy because of applying design thinking, human-centered design. And then I grew professionally from there, realizing, design thinking, agility, org change, they were applying these all through a CX lens. So I think CX professionals that think of themselves as, partners to marketing, sales, and service to kind of combine creativity with analytics are in a great position. If they're if they're the survey people, then they're actually facing a lot of problems right now.
For many reasons. I similarly had sort of a human-centered design, CX initiation, but coming out of the nonprofit world, where I was writing grants for human-centered design projects around the world and sort of thinking about building in partnership with the people we were trying to serve, which really came over them when I was thinking about product design in a business setting and sort of service design, like bringing all of that to CX is sort of how I stumbled into this world as well. So I think human-centered design is a great place to start if you're a CX professional. And you mentioned surveys. We've got to talk about surveys, right? Everyone talks about the death of surveys. We're talking about the death of surveys, and surveys were existing probably since they were created. I think it's just probably another evolution. We went from paper and phone, like we all remember that. We remember ditching those telemarketer phone calls, when they called during dinner. Um, and we're going to get to a place where surveys, I think, still have a role, but they're going to be much more surgical. You're going to really use them when you really need to get some customer feedback for measurement purposes. I think we'll use them less as sort of this spray and play approach that we have now. um, I actually predicted for 2026, we might see fewer website surveys because folks are going to realize how little they're using them and how much their website traffic is changing and how they might not be worth the squeeze to have those website surveys anymore for some organizations. So we'll see if it comes true, but it's one of my predictions for 2026.
I think you're right that, Yogi Berra, I've used this several times on the podcast. He said, "You observe a lot by watching." Right?
Yes.
Um, and so, there's a lot of analytics on the, website, like you're saying. So between mining, the same thing will be true in the call center, where you might see, the surveys changing, becoming shorter, becoming more focused, becoming more contextually sensitive based on the call. Because if you have a call, why do you do a generic survey?
Yeah, the generic survey needs to be reimagined, considered, trashed.
I saw you present recently at a conference. By the way, you were a really good presenter, and people should really think about having you as a speaker because I think they'll get a lot of value out of that. Um, and a few things I took away. One was like the way surveys are being done, so that they're much more responsive to the context, and it's basically next best content within the survey using AI, so that you can have much more balance of open and closed questions. And the open questions you ask are actually determined by what the conversation is leading to. I think that's absolutely right. And essentially, the survey becomes an experience too.
Yeah, and it really has always been, right? Like, how often you've been frustrated by a survey asking you, "What was your last purchase date with us?" Or, "When did you last visit our store?" Right? Like, that frustrates customers. They don't feel like the company knows them, and that survey becomes a negative part of the experience. So we already have that today. I hope that we move forward and we're better able to provide these contextual surveys, but we still face the same problem that you and I know well, which is the data silos and the data to enable that contextual survey, whether it's rules based or AI based, is still a huge hurdle for a lot of organizations to deliver on.
Yeah. And so, how do you think then about, AI? Let's start with surveys and then we can broaden that. But how do you see AI changing the design of surveys, balance of relationship or transactional, where you do surveys, how they're used? Like, what do you see as some of the big shifts occurring because AI is now supercharging the approach to insights?
I hope that AI helps surveys become better. Like we're talking about, like be more contextual, be shorter, be more responsive. Um, and I hope it helps us use them less frequently because we're better able to sort of do that real time contextual experience orchestration, experience delivery, and able to measure those signal and success metrics using other metrics, hopefully. In a real crazy futuristic world, is there a world in which I have a survey taking agent where, I had a bad experience shopping and I tell my digital double, my agent, hey, go give that company some feedback, whether it's via survey or email form or something else. I don't know if that's so crazy to think about, like, sort of you give the feedback, you handle customer service, you sort of handle that for me, digital double, rather than me taking the survey. I don't know, like, maybe there's a future where that exists.
I don't think it's crazy at all. Like, uh, you know, years ago, I was at PwC, right? And the way PwC captured client feedback was it had a retired partner call clients to have more in-depth conversations. And it was like a quality audit, quality control. As a partner, you had to have like at least one project a year, go through that. And all the big programs mandatory had to go through a pretty intensive client feedback process to improve the quality of the work and give feedback to the teams. Um, and manage risks and things like that. This is not the audit side. This it started on the audit, but it moved over to the consulting side of the business. Um, and there were definitely some changes going from booze to PwC, but some of them good and some of them frustrating, right? Um, and in this particular case, I bring it up because we migrated from that approach to using Qualtrics and Medallia around the world, and then eventually they standardized on Qualtrics globally because there's country firms. Um, but if you think about where it's going now, it can be agentic and it can be essentially having conversations with the clients as opposed to, and it's not fully taking advantage of that potential, but that's where we could see it going. When I left 3 years ago, there's so much more opportunity with agentic now, but just like your hotel can ask you how your stay is going, and we have customer success people and we have salespeople interacting with customers rather than mine emails and mine calls, you can be proactive in reaching out, which is effectively what a survey is, but make it conversational.
Yeah, and already we're sort of seeing, in the experience design space, having those AI facilitated interviews or AI hosted interviews, and I can see that sort of carrying over more into a VOC space where we're having these conversations more with people. And that would be really cool. And I think that's a place where maybe VOC and measurement kind of are going to diverge a little bit. We'll still have to have measurement, which is, metrics, and surveys are really good at metrics, but sort of capturing that voice of the customer, which now we do through these sort of clunky open-ended boxes in our surveys. Hopefully we can get that better through these agentic conversations, through more actual conversations, hopefully with our customers.
I'm going to broaden the aperture a little bit here, see what you think about this. That essentially what you're talking about is there are different signals in the business, right? And that a signal could be operational data, could be experience data, but if you can really parse that a little bit more finely, some signals have to do with the behavior of people on your website, in your mobile app, in social, in digital assets that are owned media. Some of them have to do with the actions they take, and this is particularly relevant in B2B when you have like scheduling and downloading content and things like that. And then you've got all these different systems, like in revenue operations, for example, with all the different systems in the stack on top of CRM and ERP that are providing very specialized, essentially listening posts to signals that you're then trying to orchestrate the action, whether it's B2B or B2C. There are differences, but the principle is the same, which is you're listening to signals so you can tailor either a human action or content, right? And the agentic is just a way of orchestrating the content with less human involvement. And then instead of an agent interacting with a person, now you may have agents interacting with agents. Like, for example, I'm involved in the launch of agenticadvertising.org, which we talked about recently, which is all about bots talking to bots. And then how do you connect advertising to the rest of the customer experience so you can listen to the signals and then you can optimize the journey orchestration. So increasingly, like customer listening is just another signal that you can recognize what persona someone is. You can tailor the experience. So it's not just closed loop feedback for a human to take action, but the journey orchestration will actually optimize next best content in real time.
Yeah, I think next best content sounds so much better than next best ad, which is what we have now. Too bad, too many journey orchestration or sort of real-time interaction is next best ad. So those shoes that I looked at yesterday now chased me around the internet for a week. And so I really am hopeful that we can get to that next best content or next best action. Maybe it is, in a financial services organization, someone who's searching for like loan relief, like they probably don't need content. They might need someone to proactively reach out to them and say, "Hey, I saw you looking for loan relief. Like, do you want to talk about where you're at? You have an account with us and there's a problem with your account." Maybe it's sort of like, it's not just content, but like, what is the actual next best action for that customer to help them achieve their goals based on what signals you're seeing? And wouldn't that be nice if we could get there?
So where do you think we really are in this evolution? Like still a lot of work to integrate all the data signals, the quality of the data, the technology. There's a lot of behavior change in the organization with revenue operations. Love to get your take on that. Is essentially bringing marketing, sales, and service together, and how you see that syncing up with experience management practices. Where are we, and where should organizations focus, maybe based on where they are in their maturity cycle?
I always think about people, process, and tech. And so, people wise, you've got folks experimenting with AI on their own. You've got employees who are used to using ChatGPT on their phone. They come to work and they're very scared about ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever it is taking their job. And so organizations, I think, need to be better in general about training and upskilling and figuring out how AI and their employees are going to work together. But pretending that it's going to go away isn't going to work. So that, like, more deliberate training, I think, more deliberate efforts to help employees figure out how to be more efficient, more effective in their jobs. And there's probably used to be people dedicated to that in HR, potentially, like thinking about the AI future of our employees and how employees are going to be using AI going forward. Um, process wise, you mentioned change management. I could probably spend all day on change management and, all the change that needs to go into that. I think from a CX professional perspective, you mentioned it earlier, becoming a partner, not a service. So, we've had this call and response sort of like, I need a survey, I need an insight. But we need to be better at partnering with the business from the beginning. And so revenue ops is a great example. Like, let's get in with shared goals from the beginning. What are the signal and outcome metrics that we're all tracking? And maybe it's not NPS, maybe it's ease, maybe it's something else, but getting in there as a partner early to help people measure and monitor their projects, I think is really important from a process perspective. And then the tech, the data silos, the data hoarding, I think we see IT stepping in a lot of organizations for good and for evil. Where IT is being really helpful is that they're helping the organization align on tech goals and data strategy and things like data governance, and they're helping lead those efforts. In other places, they're stepping in, unfortunately, and anytime they see AI in a contract, they're saying, "Hold on, wait up, we can't get involved in that," or like legal saying, "Hold on, wait up, we can't get involved with AI." And so, getting your IT and your legal and all of those folks aligned on what the AI strategy is for the organization, I think is really important. So everyone's not sort of point solutioning their way forward into this AI future. It's a lot. People, process, and tech.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people process and tech is great, and I know you help frame up the technology landscape and help advise on buying decisions. What are the most, a few years ago, a lot of the focus was on the customer data platform, and then people started talking about journey orchestration, and I mentioned revenue operations. Like, where do you see the heat right now, and where are people putting more of their energy in thinking about technology and how it intersects customer experience?
Yeah, the folks I talk to, mostly CX professionals, some data analytics type folks, marketing folks, are still trying to crack the nut on text and omni-channel text analytics. Bringing together those open-ended survey comments with those call transcripts, increasingly looking to Reddit as a source of information. What are folks saying on Reddit about our organization? Um, and so we're actually looking at sort of the customer feedback management tech space as more of an omni-channel text analytics tech space now, because surveys are such a commodity that the ability to combine text and to run these text analytics is really what folks are looking for. And they're looking at it in comparison to uploading transcripts to ChatGPT or similar and saying, hey, this is really fast and easy. Why is it so hard in this solution that I'm paying so much money for? And so trying to help organizations understand like why it's still important to have a knowledge graph and why it's still important to be able to tune your models and where AI summaries can be helpful versus, old school text analytics. And so that's a lot of what we're working on now, kind of buy versus build and thinking about text, unstructured text, and where does the organization go with that in the future? Because there's so much energy around unstructured text now, thanks to what AI and the models can do there.
I think that's really a good point about there's a lot of juice left in the orange on text analytics, and it's a lot of capabilities and changing the way the companies work and changing a lot of use cases basically that can apply text analytics beyond, and even still in the call center, there's enormous juice left in the orange to leverage text analytics. So I think that's gonna get a lot of attention for years to come. Is how to leverage that. A personal example here, I mentioned agenticadvertising.org. So if you view it from a customer experience or member experience lens for a second, I'd love to share one of the things we're doing there and get your thoughts on it. Um, so this is an organization that started agenticadvertising.org, or AAO. As the brand is like the Greek letters alpha, alpha, omega, right? Yeah, and the it's a new organization focused that built off of the AdCP standard for bot-to-bot communication. You think of the millions and millions of hours that go into briefing agencies, creating ads, um, uh, running a campaign, measuring a campaign, integrating the advertising with the promotions, the shopper marketing, the e-commerce, all the content that we talked about. So advertising and customer experience have to work together. Technology's actually driven them further apart versus brought them together. There's so much complexity on the integration. So agentic creates a new opportunity that I'm really excited about, teaming with Randall Rothenberg to advise the AAO. And one of the things we're helping on is the member experience. As lots and lots of members, both companies, their people, and individual members engage, there's a Slack community, there's lots of conversations going on. So we're taking an agentic first lens to the member experience, where essentially Addy is a bot on the site and on the Slack channel where a lot of engagement happens. And so one of the first priorities is using context and text analytics. So Addy can essentially have conversations with the members to help them, whether it's Q&A, helping them find things, making recommendations, introducing people to each other. There's a whole backlog of use cases. What used to be customer success people is
Hmm.
now a bot. And there is no survey because Addy just has a conversation with the members that we mine.
Interesting.
So we're experimenting with text analytics in the member experience for the association. I think I'm learning a lot, having a lot of fun with it.
Mad Men could see us now. It's so cool.
Yeah, and Addy doesn't drink any martinis at lunch.
So it's more effective. I think that's really interesting. And, just communities in general are something I'm seeing a little bit of a resurgence around because it is a way to get feedback from your customers in a more conversational way, in a more ongoing way. So I think it's really interesting that you're experimenting with the agentic sort of admin on that because community management is a huge job. You need someone who can actually do it and be responsive and work on all of that. So I'd be interested to know how your members feel about it. Do they feel like they're getting that personalized touch and how they feel their sentiment around the Addy experience? I'm sure it's probably effective, but is it emotionally resonant? Is what they're looking for.
I think that's a really good point. Like, as the organization grows, it's going to need people to so it's a phygital. It's not just Addy, but there's human beings building and the people building relationships with each other. But if the organization just shows up by Addy answering questions and there's never a human being involved, then people won't have that same connection with the association that they might with the company. So I think it's got to be a both and sometimes it should be a co-pilot where Addy helps a person engage rather than Addy do it directly.
Yeah, I talked to Autodesk years ago about their community, and they used it for customer feedback and product feedback, and they would sort of feed back to the community, "Hey, we heard your request for these features and functions," and they would explain why they were or were not, in some cases, gonna prioritize things. And they found that that community engagement was actually like a leading indicator of satisfaction overall with Autodesk more than some of the other sort of hygiene factors that they thought about, product satisfaction and ease of using the product. That community engagement with the product engineers and sort of hearing from the product engineers was like a really key thing. And so we can't lose the human, I think. So if Addy can set up that interview and arrange those meetings, then great. But I hope that humans still stay in the loop in these conversations with our customers. I hope.
I'd like to think of there being two primary focus areas that I engage in that I find a lot of companies engage in. One I call experience as a winning strategy, which we were talking about earlier, where like marketing is a champion for growth and customer experience is engaging with marketing, sales, and service to help leverage experience beyond the product experiences, marketing campaigns, digital experiences that are always on, like with content. Like this is experience as part of your strategy. Another I call amplifying your CX and EX together, which is what you're just talking about, is the human interactions. your employees deliver the customer experience by how they show up and how they collaborate with each other to design and build experiences, and also how they show up with customers, whether it's any frontline employee, not just contact centers. And I actually have two mastermind groups that are aligned to those topics. So let's run a quick minute sizzle reel on the masterminds, and we can continue the conversation on the other side. Allow me to briefly interrupt the podcast to share an invitation for you to join one of our mastermind groups. These groups are for leaders building out the CX function at their organization. They are for culture champions looking to develop and sustain behaviors that bring their organization's mission, vision, purpose, and values to life. I'm excited to team with Randy Rothenberg, former CEO of the IAB, on a mastermind group focused on experience as a winning marketing strategy. I'm teaming with Tamar Cohen, who has led CX and EX teams at Zoetis and Travelers, on another group focused on CX EX alignment, and with Greg Kihlstrom, host of the Agile Brand podcast, on a group focused on building a self-funding growth flywheel. Each group meets monthly for 90 minutes. Members receive a coaching hour each month and can attend quarterly workshops. Go to JourneySpark's website for more information. Please DM me on LinkedIn with any questions. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Colleen, I've really been enjoying our conversation about how customer experience is changing with the data signals, with collaboration in the organization, leveraging AI. Um, how do you see the organization of CX pivoting? Like, do you see CX staying as a separate function, or do you see CX increasingly being embedded part of a broader group?
I've been thinking a little bit about CX moving closer to product teams in some organizations. If you think about if a digital double example is buying a printer on my behalf and they go to the HP website and they buy the printer, me, Colleen, as a customer, my experience with HP is really just the unboxing of that printer and the use of that printer. And so I think if CX is closer to product in some of those very product-based experiences, it's a good place for them to be because they'll be measuring the satisfaction with the human interaction with that product or services. Similarly with hotels, right? Like moving closer to the operations of the hotel, sort of being closer to where the human is actually having that interaction and further away from where the human might not be having so much of the interactions like the website or something like that, because that shopping experience and potentially that service experience are less human, because there's agentic or bots or digital sort of handling more of that. And so I think we could see CX moving closer to the physical parts of wherever the organization is actually having the human interactions. And I hope it moves up. I hope it moves up to more of a strategic priority in some organizations that realize if you put agentic all over your organization, but there's no strategy connecting them, you'll have bots chasing conflicting goals. One is if marketing as a bot try to chase marketing goals versus someone else who's trying to chase a loyalty goal, like there might be conflicts there. And so having a strategy that puts the customer at the center, hopefully CX gets closer to the C-suite, gets closer to strategy, gets closer to the chief operations officer, and thinking about how all of these agentic bots or agents are going to be working together, who, gets primacy, prioritization, like all of that needs to be figured out with a customer lens, not just a business lens. So I'm hoping that also happens.
Yeah, it's and by the way, I have to say, because you just brought up HP as one of your examples, that Brandon McGovern, who's the CX lead at HP for the printer business, they split the company, the printers and computer side versus more of the enterprise tech side. So Brandon, the CX lead, was on the podcast recently. So folks who are interested in HP can go check out that podcast, and be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. But it's what you're bringing up. I think there's no easy answer on organization, and I often say that no matter where you put it, there's a blind spot, because it's like if you put it in marketing, what's the intersection with sales and service? If you put it in IT, what's the intersection with the business? If you put it in sales and marketing, so forth. So it's always like, does it belong here? And the answer is always yes, because it collaborates with all of them. So I think what you're highlighting is powerful, which is to start with the same thing's not true with just CX, but if you say, where does marketing operations belong, or where does insights belong, or where does a digital COE belong in the organization? There's always blind spots organizationally. And what I've been trained through my experience focusing on like culture and change management at Booz and PwC, um, was that the org structure is important, but it's actually not the most important lever to pull in org effectiveness to drive change. Actually, the way work gets done, the behaviors, the measurement, the decision rights. These are all more important than design of the structure itself. And if all a structure can be useful, but it's not the most important thing to solve for. What you highlighted is how are you trying to create value? Who needs to be involved in creating that value, and how do you foster collaboration around that versus who owns the cheese?
Yeah, we say the same thing. People come to us with org charts all the time. Like, this looks great, but what's the strategy? Why? Who has decision making rights? So completely agree. I also failed to mention, and I think this well, which is a journey orientation. So having a journey orientation and putting CX sort of on those journey teams or journey management also helps with those silo breaking and with that sort of cross functional coordination that we all know is so important. And so I think a lot of organizations are trying to think about if we're organizing around journeys for the future as well, and how that might work in this agentic future. So interesting to see.
You you gave this slide that really stuck with me in Florida when you presented, where you showed like the trees that were actually like a system, and it wasn't like it was. They were all interconnected. And what you said, you were using it to talk about culture and the interconnectedness of things. I don't know if you want to share that specific example, but or the general idea about how you think about culture and how you get like the birds to fly in sync or the trees to live as a system. Like how do you manage the system versus the parts? Because I think that's what we're getting at here.
Yeah. So that tree, I love that tree. But if you sort of look down, it's all one connected root system. And that root system works in concert to defend the tree against threats, to make the tree stronger, to make sure all the different parts of the tree get fed equally. So it's really interesting. It looks like all these little siloed individual trees, but it's all interconnected underneath. And I think we need to think about delivering our customer experiences in a connected way. And so, organizational structure will always be a thing. There's always going to be some silos because that's just how people need boxes. We need to know how where we function and how we function, but we have to have those shared goals and that culture, the shared CX vision, the shared goals has to be that connective culture, that connective fabric, sorry, the root system that supplies all of these trees. If we're not connected and we're sort of, marketing goals, CX goals, our customers are going to feel it, and we're going to continue to have sort of these disconnected programs and processes that hold us back from achieving our goals and our customers achieving their goals. And so I loved the waking aspen sort of analogy of connected root systems fueling this one connected tree system.
It was a beautiful metaphor. I thought it was really good.
Thanks.
And yeah, it stuck with me. And so what you're highlighting is, culture is what helps create some of that cohesion. It helps drive the behavior. It could be a culture of collaboration, could be culture of agility, culture of quality. There's not one size fits all for the culture. And that actually helps. I tend to think of it as a pathway to value and like a discipline that you're building around that. Often an organization has a commitment to something like quality or agility or design thinking. And the types of use cases you focus on for CX should align to that path, and the cultural behaviors should align to that. And if the leader, that's where leaders get together to really shape that shared vision and collaborative and actually put in place the right behaviors in the organization. They collectively own the culture. So how do you think about like AI and listening and stuff like that reinforcing culture and behaviors? Is that something you're involved in or think about, as how the customer listening can connect to the behaviors and the feedback loops and the kind of making that root system stronger?
I don't know if we need AI for that. I think this is humans, right? You talked about different types of culture. I think a culture of accountability is also really important. I talked to one of the leaders when I did my future of CX research, who said that he could tell the culture in his organization was improving or changing for the better when they were in quarterly business reviews and the executives didn't ask the CX team what they were going to do to fix, lacking scores or lacking CX. They asked the product leads. And so it was sort of, understanding that, a drop in customer experience isn't the fault of the CX team. This is something we all have to work on together. Customer experience is a shared goal. And that's a people thing. I think moving away from giving people bonuses for survey scores, like things like that they're culture driven. They're not AI driven necessarily.
I think you're 100% right. And uh, I think there's a role for AI, but I'll get back to it in a second. I think you're right that the most important thing ultimately are the values, that the leaders are committed to them, that the leaders model them, that they're aligned against them, that they showcase the right behaviors, they mentor others to engage in the behaviors, that they're spotting clues and acting on them, they're empowered. This is all about people. Now, and by the way, that's what the CX and culture connection is, the name of the podcast in my book. It's all about how people engage and their behavior is what delivers the CX, right? Um, but AI has a role in that it can create insights that more velocity and quality of insights to give people so they can take action, right? More democratic access to insights in more people's hands so they're empowered to spot clues and take action. And then also, like, we'll take it in the call center and you can expand it to frontline employees. We talked about this earlier. You can listen to all the conversations they have and you can actually you can spot whether they're delivering an experience that evokes the right emotions and then what behaviors they're engaging in that deliver those emotional peaks. You can actually, this has been done for years with quality management and call centers. It's just by auditing calls. Now we can actually have AI deliver that monitoring and coaching um, without as much, effort. But ultimately, you're right. It comes back to people embracing and using it in human behavior. So, do I get partial credit? AI has a role to play, but it's not the central thing.
Yes. Completely agree. And I'd love it if AI wasn't just used for that quality monitoring the contact center, but is it helping us more quickly identify why calls are coming in the first place? And where are the more emotionally charged calls coming from? So we can go fix upstream, go correct whatever's leading to the call center having to take those emotionally charged calls and having to, get all that call volume. So hopefully AI can help us be better at spotting those signals and those trends faster, and more accurately as well.
Yeah, I love the way that you brought it back to more outer loop and strategic insights and getting the organization to act more often holistically rather than just break fix. Any last thoughts you have for the audience? First of all, thank you for coming on. It's been a lot of fun chatting, and I know you've added sparked a lot of ideas for me, and I'm sure have for the audience. Any last thoughts you want to share with the audience as we unfortunately have to come to a close?
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you. I think, talking to the folks that I talk to near and dear to my heart, the folks that are frontline, responsible for VOC programs, trying to lead a CX or VOC program. My favorite line is stop random acts of listening. Really take a step back before you try to AI your program. Really think about each one of your surveys, each one of your questions, and who's the audience in your organization? Like, really get your program better aligned with the business goals now. So you're already seen as a partner. You're already being more strategic. You're already sort of ready to go whenever AI comes to your organization, no matter where you are in your maturity. You're sort of already doing more strategic listening to help the business that's ready to kind of jump forward with more AI enablement.
If folks want to get in touch with you, is LinkedIn,
LinkedIn's
email,
great.
website? What's the LinkedIn's the best?
Yep. LinkedIn's
And
the
I'm
best.
sure it's on the screen right now. And again, I would definitely encourage folks that, I think Colleen was a great speaker, and I'm sure you do great work consulting on the tech and the journey and all the stuff that Forrester does. And definitely folks should reach out and connect with her. I've always enjoyed our conversations. And thanks again for coming on the show, Colleen.
Thanks. This is a lot of fun. Anytime.